afternoon. Hope everybody had a wonderful bye week. You Tennessee Titans fans, SEC football fans, welcome to a football show here.
Fantastic bye week because all my teams won. So I had a fantastic. I
Undefeated.
drank way too much. Great weekend.
Undefeated
Got to watch real football for once this weekend.
Zach Lyons, undefeated over the weekend. Of course, welcome to a football show. My name's Braden Gall. That is Zach, of course, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. Reminder, our Russell's Barrel Pick is available right now over at Sinkers Beverages. Go sign up for the in-crowd. Tell them 440 sent you, and you can have access to go purchase that delicious bottle that Zach Lyons personally helped select for you folks out there. The much evolved, very particular palate of Zach Lyons.
Yep. You got great palate. Like there's nothing that I haven't eaten or drinking that I couldn't tell you what it tastes like.
That's quite a skill you've got there. So go to Sinkers Beverages, of course, in East Nashville, the #1 liquor store in Nashville in 2022. So there you go. Sinkers Beverages serving East Nashville. You can also Uber Eats the booze. Just search on Uber Eats, search Sinkers Beverages, and have that booze delivered directly to your house.
They drive so you can drink.
The Kingston Group, our great partner, and honestly, they've been the partner with this company longer than literally any other partner we've had. I've done work on my house. My wife and I use them. We use some people that used to work for them. Like if anything we do around our house, it's basically tied back to the Kingston Group. So buildkg.com. Make sure you check them out. Locally owned, award-winning custom home and remodeling firm. So just talk with them, have the conversation. We've told you guys about them for years now. There's a reason they are still partnered with us and we are still partnered with them. It's because they're the best. So go talk with them. That's all you got to do. Today on the show, is Alabama likable? You were talking about your team winning. Is Alabama actually a likable football team now? How close are the Tennessee Volunteers to being competitive at the highest levels in the SEC? You got a couple of other notes from across the SEC. As Missouri is surging into a game with Georgia in a couple of weeks. We've got some young players we want to discuss, trying to give you guys something different when it comes to the bye week, as we did last week, I think, on the show. When it comes to the Tennessee Titans, there's a lot of young pieces, and this is coming off of the trade rumors we're going to start with on the show today and some internet stupidity. But I think what's interesting is there are a lot of young pieces that the Titans apparently will not be trading or be fielding calls on. And we're gonna try to identify some of those pieces and guys we need to see develop over the course of the second half of the season. So there we go. Yes, D. Good. Zach, were you worried in the first half, down 20-7 at halftime against Tennessee?
It may have been the alcohol, but because I'd been, like I said, I've been drinking since like 8 a.m.
Nice.
So no, it just felt like it kind of looked bad, but it really never felt out of reach. And I think that's just because Joe Milton is the quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers.
Ironically, after playing like one of the best halves of his entire career in that first half. So we'll get to that. Again, is Alabama likable? Is Tennessee close? We'll get to some of those questions coming up. But the rumors, of course, swirling during the bye week. No real conversation yet on the starting quarterback. I still would be shocked if it's not Will Levis. He's apparently, quote unquote, made progress. But here's the deal. Kevin Byard, Diana Rossini reporting. Kevin Byard, Tennessee Titans fielding calls on the veteran safety, due a lot of money next year. I believe the $19 million cap hit. There's a date. I don't have the date written down. I should have written it down. But there's a date with which he either needs to be traded by in the offseason or the money kicks in. So it's all but likely he's gone at the end of the year. So, of course, you should be fielding calls when you're 2-4 during the bye week. Nobody interested in Derrick Henry, supposedly. At least at the price point maybe that the Titans want. And then, of course, one phone call about Treylon.
At least not yet.
Yeah, there you go. And one phone call. Reminder, the deadline is Halloween. So it's basically coming up next week. And you've got one phone call about Treylon Burks, but it sounds like the Tennessee Titans are not interested in moving young pieces. We'll get to each one of these things, but let's start with Byard because I think it's the simplest and easiest piece of analysis, which is take whatever you can
Byard.
Take what you can get.
Because I think that he's probably got a good reputation around the league as well, even though that he is not living up to that reputation currently. But there are teams like, look at the Detroit Lions. They are in desperate need of some back-end help. They've had injuries. You saw how abused they got by the Baltimore Ravens over the weekend. And let me say this, Byard is not fixing that. He will get abused by Mark Andrews as well.
Shh. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell
Well,
me that.
luckily I think Joe Rexford may be the only Lions fan may watch the show. Um, and then you see the Eagles because the Eagles just love everybody. I mean, they'll take anybody on. Hey, come on over to the Eagles and blah blah blah. I think there's just a lot of opportunity with injuries around the league for Byard to go and fit in and to maybe even help. Let's say that he does go to the Lions. The Lions are relatively a young team with a Mike Vrabel-esque head coach.
Yep.
What better way to not only maybe improve your secondary situation, but improve your environment in the locker room with probably the most natural fit out of all the players in Kevin Byard to bring him over. So that when all the Lions players went down with injury in the secondary a couple of weeks ago, I was like, Christian Fulton, Kevin Byard, send them to the Lions. That seems like easy fits, easy fixes, easy fits for that team. That is a contending team that could use those players. Now, will those players help? Probably better than what they got right now, but not necessarily because they're playing as shells of their former self. Regardless, I don't want to spark any controversy, but I heard someone the other day on the radio say that Christian Fulton is playing just fine and he has not given up on this team, and I think it has to do with the personal relationship with the player, not being objective. But that's just something I'm going to throw.
I'm glad I don't know who you're talking about. Here's what I'll say about Byard. I think he is more valuable to a team like the Lions than he is even to a team like the Eagles, because the Eagles have so much veteran leadership and experience in the postseason. But I do think Byard's value could come in different forms than actual playmaking on the field, right? I think the Lions need somebody who's been in the battles before, because they're very good. They've got a chance to be very good. And listen, Baltimore, I don't know what the hell they did. I don't know what the hell Todd Monken did, but they dissected them yesterday. And it was very impressive. But I do think the Lions have a chance to clearly win the division. The other three teams in that division are terrible. And so I think it's their division to lose. And if you add a stabilizing sort of veteran professional presence in the locker room, like, I don't know what that's worth, but if you throw in Fulton, can you get a 4th round for him? Like, let's do it. Like, let's see what you can get. So
I think you can get a modest or very good pick for Kevin Byard. And listen, if you get a 3rd for Kevin Byard, take it no matter what.
Yep.
Because guess what? Technically the Titans only spent a 3rd on Kevin Byard, right? Like, I don't know. You're kind of getting back what you paid for, and you're being able to reset possibly either that position or another position for the next 4 or 5 years. And like I said, I don't think he wants to be here. I think the whole ordeal around the offseason where he was asked to take a pay cut and he eventually took a pay cut, it just soured everything. And then, like you said, it's in March is when the deadline is for that $4 million to kick in. So they got plenty of time. But right now, it seems like interest is high on Kevin Byard. The worst thing the Tennessee Titans can do is decide to sit on their hands, not trade him, and guess what happens? Something similar to Ryan Tannehill, where maybe he gets injured towards the end of the year, or his play continues to decline, and everybody has a chance to see that it's declining, and then guess what? You're still stuck with him. Or you could just cut him, but then you're not getting anything for him.
I think you are. I think you listen. We're not in like completely give up. We've done the trade conversation so many times. So I think everybody understands that we don't feel like you can kind of do both. You can kind of still maybe contend for the division and move to Levis.
I don't think Kevin Byard is an important piece to the win and loss column.
The key is just get as much draft capital as possible. Like, that's really where we're at here. So so again, Derrick Henry, not really interested around the league, not interest from around the league, I should say. About Derrick Henry, I'm not all that surprised by that with his age and sort of like he has to fit into a very particular scheme, and I think he's worth more to this team than he's going to be worth to anybody else. So, can he sell some tickets down the stretch if he's going for some sort of numbers here or there like that? We talked about that a lot as well. The Burks thing is interesting to me because my first instinct almost always with a player of his caliber of talent, which I think is still very high, is to never ever move on from this. And this is hockey. This is baseball, this is football. Like, I just err on the side of give your guy time to develop. Like, I almost always, you liked him for a reason. You scouted him. I get it. It wasn't the current general manager, so I understand the dynamics, but I almost always err on that side. But in the interest of having this conversation for Titans fans fully, there does have to be a number at some point that you say, okay, fine, we'll take a pick. And the number I keep landing on is a 2nd round pick. Anything second or above and you take it. Maybe 2 threes even. I don't know, but I'd like to know where you fall on. I don't think they should do it, but in the interest of full conversation here and working through this, where is the line for you with Treylon Burks?
It's kind of a weird confliction because we've seen Burks be something, and it's only really he hasn't even played a full complement of 16 games yet, like in his career. I mean, the games he played last year plus the games he played this year, I don't even think they equal up to 16. Maybe not even close, or now it's 17, I guess. So we haven't even seen like technically a full season's worth of film on Treylon Burks, I guess is what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
I need to check that before we go too deep
No, I
on
think
that thing.
I think you're right. I think it's between. I'm willing to bet you it's 16, 17, or 18, give or take, because I think he missed 4
we're
games last
looking
year.
at he has played 14 games
Yeah, there you go.
his entire career. And so yeah, I mean, like, you hate to give up on a guy before year 3. And the reason that this team is in the mess it's in because it has let young talent walk. Now, the level of young talent that is Treylon Burks, I don't know. I don't know what talent he could be. I mean, he was a first-round pedigree wide receiver by everybody's big board all across America. Every analyst, I would say every team, had a first-round grade on him. They may not have as him a blue chip or top 15 or anything like that, but I'm telling you right now that everybody had a first-round grade. I'd be shocked if a team, maybe there's one stupid ass team, because it feels like there is one stupid ass team.
Well,
But
and you and I,
at the end of the day,
let's be accountable. Let's be accountable as well in that. I would assume that we both thought, yes, quality first round player.
yeah,
Right?
I think everybody did.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one person who thought that said Treylon Burks not a first round talent.
Right.
Now, should he be afforded the opportunity to change the narrative? And does he have a high opportunity to change narrative? I think when you have that kind of pedigree and that kind of athletic talent, it is there. Right now, his biggest thing is injury. And what did we say about A.J. Brown when he got traded or left? What have we said about other players that have gone on whatever? We said A.J. Brown, well, he never really stays healthy anyway. And then here's the thing.
Conklin,
he never stayed healthy. I mean, he still has. Here's where I'm at is that players are allowed to get better in year 3, year 4, and year 5. We see A.J. Brown getting better, and he has stayed healthier. I mean, people are talking about his target share, blah, 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 blah. Listen, he averaged 5.3 targets a game his first year, then 7.6 targets, then 8.1 targets in his last year with Tennessee. 8.5 last year with Philly, and 10.7 so far this year with Philly. A lot of that has to do with him just getting better as a pro. And some of that means you have to be patient with certain players. And I think Treylon Burks to me is a player that needs to be patient with, but he doesn't need a long leash. And I'm with you. You offer me a second for Treylon Burks, I'm taking it. I think the wide receivers coming out next year are even better than previous years. And I think that even if you got 2/3, which you could package to do different things, you have to take it.
Yeah.
But if they kept, I would understand their rationale for keeping them. Like I could take a step back, be objective, and say, hey, this guy should be allowed with the first round talent to try to rebound. Now, it does not mean that you ignore the wide receiver position next year or the year after. You have to still build around Will Levis. But what's better for Will Levis? Having Treylon Burks or not having Treylon Burks?
And that's basically Stoney's point here. And I think Pretty Boy Lipschitz is in there as well. I know a few of you guys, Logan, I see a few of you, D Good, that aren't sort of anti-Burks. I'm not saying, passionately here, but you're sort of, hey, I'm concerned about the injuries or I'm worried about this. I don't think he was overrated. I think he's a very, very talented player. I've also seen it in camp, and we've seen it in flashes and moments on the field. But to your point, to Stoney's point, Sobro's network there, if you trade Byard or Henry, you have guys you could roll with at safety and running back. Also 2 positions that are very easy to find in general relative to the other positions on the field. If you trade Burks, who's in that receiving core to fill out? And then Pretty Boy is talking about sort of the pairing. Like if you are moving on to a new quarterback, which is the plan with Will Levis or Malik Willis, whoever you think, or even a rookie next year, you need at least some options out there. And the other thing is like with Burks in particular, and maybe this is the Nashville Predators inside of me, where it's like the Titans play a different style, and you could see Treylon Burks going on and being more productive in a different offense, just the way AJ Brown is more productive in a different offense. Like AJ Brown would not be putting up those numbers in this offense. Like it's just not. It's not what would happen. And so, like you
I don't
see,
know if I agree with that. If he gets and they showed a penchant for giving him the ball. It's what he does when he gets the ball, and when he gets the ball, that's what matters. It's not the team or the scheme. It's what he does when he gets the ball.
no, I'm just saying offensive line, quarterback, scheme, defense, quality. I mean, just everything is better in that situation. I mean, there's a reason they played in the Super Bowl. So he would be a superstar here. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, like, I could see. Let's go back to Burks. I could see Burks having 2 seasons of sort of like injury filled, not really productive, but kind of showing flashes, which is what he's kind of done. They trade him in the offseason for a 3rd round pick, and then he goes on to play with like a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he puts up really good numbers. You know what I mean? Like I can just that's the thing that
But part
happens
of that
to like
is that he stays healthy, and that's why you got to give these guys a chance.
Sure.
I think you have to give rookies a 3 or 4 year window for the most part. I think you can't afford to do that with quarterback because it's so important, and typically those guys don't make the progressiveness for that versus a wide receiver are totally different. The learning curves are totally different, and the need for them is totally different. So, like I said, I could see the rationale either way. If they keep him and turn down a 4th round pick, totally understand it.
I would turn down a
Burks,
4th round pick.
Right. Burks is worth more than a 4th round pick, regardless of what the fans think. He goes to if Burks went to let's talk about a team that's kind of like on the cusp. Okay,
Chargers.
Let's yeah, they pretty much Mike Williams out for the season, I believe. So if you put Burks over with Herbert, don't you think that Burks is probably going to thrive a little bit more? And listen, he may not be an instant impact, but they're going to have the ability for him to grow. Like you have to allow.
Yeah,
I get it. You got to stay healthy. The best ability is availability for sure. I agree 100%. But everybody said that about AJ Brown when they were coping that when he left, and he may never be AJ Brown. But you have to remember that there is the chance that a player like Treylon Burks, who is just they're minor injuries, they're not life career ending injuries. Those eventually could go away.
Yes, they
like
could.
you have to allow for young players to get better.
To become professionals to some extent, like sort of form your body into a professional body to some degree. Some guys are already ready, and some guys take a little bit of time.
He was way behind, right?
Yeah, he was.
We know that he was way behind in that regard.
Random observation as I was watching games this weekend and thinking about Burks because of his physical stature. Because I know you and I have had this conversation about size in the NFL at that position. Burks obviously skews one direction on the size spectrum. We know John Robinson really liked his big sort of burly receivers. And I'm watching Josh Downs. We've talked about him. Concerns about his size, playing pretty well with a questionable offense. You know, Zay Flowers is performing pretty well, undersized player. You got Devin Achane, who's in a magical system, perfect for his skills. Tyreek Hill is not very large. Jalen Waddle's not very big.
Man, he is the king of, for whatever reason, people just forget that he exists.
I guess.
He is a busted coverage merchant. Yeah. I've never seen so many defenders after he catches a ball look at each other and be like, "You're supposed to be the one that got him."
The hot take,
he's a busted coverage merchant.
Yeah, the hot take radio thing is like, oh, small players are going to be great now. The NFL's changing. No, my take is that there have been a lot of young, smallish players who are rookies who we sort of discussed, hey, statistically, very improbable that they will be successful. Well, we're seeing 3 or 4 or 5 of them do pretty well this year. I'm not saying that it's changing the theme or the stats or the data, but it is something to keep an eye on as the NFL goes into space and starts using these guys in more creative and dynamic and in different ways.
Also we talked about last week, and I talked about it with Stoney in a chat, is this new cover 2 too high safety is allowing less of these guys to get crammed up at the line. Yep. Right? There's a lot of less physical press man coverage up at the line, which is allowing these smaller guys to do something that they could do in college. That's something that may be a trend for the next few years until the new wave of defense, shows up, and then they're back to man coverage again. Rest next
Again,
line.
why you listen to a football show brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in the Kingston Group is you hopefully get tidbits like that and a subject like that no one else in this market is talking about. No one's talking about the size of receivers on this Monday afternoon. So anyway, rate, review, subscribe, give us a subscription there on the YouTube page and check us out on the podcast feed as well. Stackingtheinbox.com as well. Quick plug for you. Part of the reason I love that, not just because you do good writing, but I never really know what the headline's going to be ever. I never know. And it's always something different and always something creative. And that's why people should go to stackingtheinbox.com and check that out. So, okay. Keep an eye on the trade stuff. I think that's the most interesting stuff heading into this week outside of who's going to be quarterback, but we're not going to know who's going to be the quarterback probably until 11:58.
Well, let me say this. It gets 3:00 p.m. is today's Mike Vrabel's press conference at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on Monday. So I doubt they'll have anything there. I would say that we're waiting till Friday or Saturday, Sunday, something. There may be that X that comes out that says so-and-so's taking first-team reps in pregame warm-ups.
And he'll have another one on Tuesday, I think at 11 a.m. So depending on when you're listening to this, we'll get you up to date on Thursday. But I think you and I are pretty clearly on the Will Levis needs to start train. Because again, we haven't even touched on this, but the reports are that Ryan Tannehill is unlikely to play this weekend. So just out there in general, but that was kind of at the end of last week after the show. So let's get into the stupid shit, huh? You want
just
to?
Real quick, Mark Fox on Facebook says, what's the link to the YouTube cast? I can't stand watching on Facebook. If you follow 440 Sports on Twitter, there's a link in there, but it's at 440 Sports on Broadway or on YouTube. Yep. So go to youtube.com/440 Sports.
Yep. And the Google machine works pretty well too. Just 440 Sports YouTube. That'll work. So thank you for that, Mark and Zach. I do appreciate it. So let's get to the stupid shit. We've done this a lot over the years of like, don't take the bait and the internet is stupid. And remember, enragement is what the media wants, not quality content. And so we've kind of done that a lot. There's a bunch of different topics I want to kind of bullet point here. And we'll start with the Mike Vrabel thing. Like the appropriate reaction to Mike Vrabel being in New England to be inducted into his own Hall of Fame should be, way to go.
It went from Ring of Honor to Ring of Horror for some Titans fans.
I really truly don't understand. Like, I get that it's the 2 and 4 thing, but like,
yeah, but it's because the main contention is because he said, let's get a win today, or we need a win. We go get this win today, or something like that to the Patriots. Like, have you never heard former players or coaches talk in your life? They refer to every team that they were a part of as we. And why not end it like that? Like, it's you have a captive audience. You got to get the crowd hype. Of course, you're going to say, let's go get that win or whatever worded. Yeah, I know he used the word we, and that's what threw Titans fan base apparently in a tizzy.
Well, like Jarrell Casey, Delaney Walker, like there's plenty of Titans that went on to play other places for like the last few minutes or whatever that come back and you're like, no, you did a lot of your work here. So like, we're going to celebrate you. And so there's lots of things on the, and I want to ask you. So I myself rarely do the dunking sort of trolling, like just I'm in here to just get clicks. Like I don't ever do it. I don't like it. It's not my thing. I'm not good at it. Like I'm very self-aware on all this stuff, but like I can't help myself because I'd like to think that I hold my own alumni and my own fandom and my own teams as accountable as I would hold somebody who's I'm covering. Right. And that is that Greg Schiano is bowl eligible and Jeremy Pruitt is on a show cause. So like, just want to point that out. Couldn't help myself on Saturday night. Rutgers got to bowl eligibility. I even acknowledge that sometimes I don't take my own advice. I don't, I waded into the sewers. I chose violence. And I just wanted to point out that the Twitter app on Saturday night, awfully fucking quiet about Greg Schiano coaching Rutgers to a bowl game while Jeremy Pruitt and Philip Fulmer are not employed. I just wanted to point that out and hold my own alumni base accountable for the fact that they were so fucking ridiculously wrong about that entire organizational screw up. And so maybe I need to apologize and say on occasion, I do like to wade into those sewers, but only on occasion.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think this whole Mike Vrabel thing is just utterly ridiculous. And I think it's fine to bring up Greg Schiano, though you have to say If it wasn't for that ridiculousness that they exhibited with Jeremy Pruitt, they probably may never gotten to Josh Heupel. Like sometimes that
That's
stuff
true. It's true.
kind of has a trickle down effect, right?
Yeah, no, you're
Which
absolutely
they're
right.
in a much better spot. And listen, I thought the whole thing. I'm with you. The whole thing was just utterly. It was so enjoyable, but it was laughably stupid because of the coach they actually ended up with was just like bald Butch Jones. But
might be a compliment
because I was never a Jeremy Pruitt fan. I thought it was great that the UT fans hired him. But this Mike Vrabel thing, like guys, he played 8 seasons with the Patriots. He won 3 Super Bowls, and they purposely scheduled this during the bye week so it wouldn't interfere with anything. And they do it because a lot of people say, why didn't they do it after the season? They should just waited till after. It's because they have a captive audience, right? I mean, like the people are in the seat. They want people to be. They want it to make it feel special, and they have a bunch of Patriots fans at home. It's a rivalry game. Here comes Mike Vrabel. Like, well, you got to relax. And just because he showed emotion in a manufactured speech where you're supposed to show emotion and get hype, we've seen post-game speeches from him where he's getting everybody hype. We've seen pre-game speeches, interactions. Right. We've seen this here at the Tennessee Titans. You all saw nothing differently than what you have seen here for the Tennessee Titans. Just everybody's got to bitch and moan and complain about every little thing. And we got ran up right to the Sunday deadline, and there was nothing for anybody to bitch about in Titans fandom. And they had to fucking find this, and this had to go. And people had to make tweets. People had to get in videos and make car videos and complain.
Okay.
Like the little fucking bitches that they are.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Green Thumb says, and I don't care about which host this was, but Green Thumb says, same with the 102.5. They spent 2 hours bashing him nonstop. One reason I think that this is the more interesting part of this. One reason I predict today that he will not be the Titans head coach come February. And so we have not discussed this, and we will have plenty of time to discuss this. I don't think it has anything to do, as someone who used to gas bag and bloviate all over that exact airwaves, Mike Vrabel is not making a decision about his future because of some radio hosts on a channel. That is complete nonsense. But is he tired of the current power structure? Is he tired of the organization? Is he tired of the city? I'm making shit up here, but I'm just saying there is an interesting. Is he tired of, frankly, his body language against the Ravens and his body language the previous week against the Colts looked like a guy who was tired of beating his head against the wall. So I think there is time,
to be fair,
to have that conversation in the future.
People have been linking the Patriots being trading for him and have created this. There's this narrative out there that the Patriots are going to trade for Mike Vrabel. Well, before Mike Vrabel even hit the podium, they talked about how they've already extended a very lucrative deal for Bill Belichick. Yep. It is the Patriots are in a worse position than the Tennessee Titans, in my opinion, because you would have to find a new GM to come in there because they don't. Bill Belichick is the GM, the head decision maker.
Now, I could see that happening. I could see him transitioning to the role full time to GM and then going.
Maybe he does, but I mean, let's get real. I mean, if the Patriots were to trade draft capital for Mike Vrabel, what are they going to do with the roster?
No,
it makes no sense to me. I think you would have a better shot of him landing in Ohio State than you do him at the Patriots sooner in this soon little time frame that we're in.
Like, I don't, Green Thumb, I'm not saying you're totally wrong, or I'm not necessarily agreeing with anything you're saying there, but what I'm getting at is I think there's a thread we could pull on, which is at the end of the season, if things haven't gotten much better, is there an interesting question to be asked, like, hey, Mike Vrabel, in a moment of honesty and privacy, are you kind of ready for a new chapter? And like, I wouldn't be surprised if his answer was yes to that. So we're not there yet. We're a long way off from that. He's built a lot of equity, in my opinion, in this market. So a couple of other bullets.
If anybody has a problem with him doing the Patriots thing, they're losers. Plain and simple. I have no respect for anybody. I don't know which radio show did this, and I think it's utterly ridiculous. Don't tell me which radio show it is because I want to be able to still listen to it. But I think it's utterly ridiculous that people spent 2 hours bashing him for no fucking reason.
I think presenting the would you trade him for draft picks is a viable radio topic. But again, we don't do radio. We're doing a podcast where we have a long form conversation about details and nuance. Okay, so the other quick thing that was all over the internet, because this is like a bullet point list of like Twitter nonsense, basically internet stupidity. One is Titans fans getting pissed off at Mike Vrabel going to celebrate, because guess what happens for the Titans when somebody goes into the Ring of Honor? It happens in the season. You do it during a game. That's what you do.
I think the problem is that Titans fans haven't seen anybody inducted into the Ring of Honor in a nice ceremony in a while, and maybe that's the issue. Because I was just kind of thinking about it, like, what are we waiting for Keith Bulluck? Like, what are we waiting for like someone like Samari Rolle and all these guys? Like, you should have one or two every year, because Terrell Suggs got into the Baltimore Ravens one yesterday as well.
Samari Rolle is a Ring of Honor quality player.
Rolle. Why not?
I mean, Terrell Suggs is one of the top 5-10 pass rushers in the history of the NFL.
I'm not disputing that, but I mean, like, listen, the Titans don't have a lot of fucking players to choose from, Brady.
Valid. No, you're valid. That's right. So another one of these is the throwbacks, of course, are all over the internet for the last like 6 months or whatever. And like, it's okay to have whatever opinion you want. Most people think they're awesome, but like the internet's, you don't have to be stupid about it. You can just have your own opinion. Logos, uniforms, helmets, everyone sort of has their very, they get people very worked up. Trust me, as someone who used to work on the hamster click wheel on Google, like we could put logos and uniforms and helmets and shit on there, and we would get like just absolutely ridiculous traffic numbers. So people have tons of opinions, and it's okay to argue. Like, to me, that's the purpose of the internet, is to argue about like retro uniforms. Like that's okay stuff. The Vrabel going to the Hall of Fame thing is stupid. I even acknowledge that my own stupidity on the Schiano stuff is pure trolling. I admit that. But the last one here is, and I want to get your thoughts on this, and that is, there was a couple of analysts for college football. USC loses again. Caleb Williams plays a mediocre game again, and there's the conversation is Caleb Williams, should he sit out or not? And I think personally that the question itself and all of our opinions about that, the answer to that question, is completely irrelevant and stupid. I think it's irrelevant what Zach Lyons and Braden Gall have to say about what Caleb Williams should do in his life. I think it's stupid. I think it's irrelevant. My take is, it's Caleb Williams' life. It's Caleb Williams' career. Caleb Williams can do whatever the fuck Caleb Williams wants to do, and we don't really have any right to say anything else otherwise. If you spend $50,000 on USC season tickets, maybe you feel like you can say something. But I guarantee you there's not many of you in Tennessee that have spent that kind of money on USC box suites at the Coliseum. So who cares? Who cares what Caleb Williams decides to do? I want to watch him play. Selfishly, that's what I want. But that's it. That's it. I have no other right to tell him what he should or shouldn't do in his life.
I think this whole Caleb Williams thing is so interesting, not just from the standpoint you're talking about, but you're talking about the guy that was called the next great quarterback prospect, and now he may not even go in the first round. I mean, the amount of people who have now put Caleb Williams into that tier, and there was almost every draft analyst, every fan, they were all dying, killing each other to crawl over to try to get Caleb Williams next great quarterback prospect. And maybe that is a discussion in and of itself, is that maybe we should stop trying to label everybody the next great quarterback prospect. He was can't miss. Now, 3 games in, and he hits a little slump, and everybody's like, nope, we're out. His pressure grade is really bad this year. I don't know what it was last year, but he's not been done well under pressure this year. I don't know. CJ Stroud didn't do well under pressure either, and he's doing pretty well under pressure this year. I mean, sometimes you land in the right system in right coaching staff could do wonders. And I think people are overthinking what and who Caleb Williams is and what he can bring to an NFL offense. And I don't want to hear it. Like, okay, you guys started the roller coaster, then you jumped off the roller coaster while it's still moving. You're not allowed back on. I don't want to see anybody try in the offseason saying, well, you know, here's the film, and he's a better prospect than Drake May. If you've already said that he's not a better draft, if you've gotten off the Caleb Williams train, you're not allowed back on.
Okay, I guess I'm okay with people changing their opinion. Now, what I find interesting about the sit out or sit in or whatever conversation is not that like I think any of us have any, like I clearly don't think that any of us have any right to, like if I turn on a podcast or a radio show and they're like, I think he should play, I don't care. I think what's interesting is the reaction from the NFL scouts and general managers and coaches based on whatever decision he makes. It doesn't matter what decision he makes, or any other player for that matter, sitting out a bowl game.
I will say this:
I find that to be interesting.
and his statements are starting to snowball, and that's not good. Like, don't you think between wanting to choose his own team, supposedly, wanting stock in that team, and now maybe he sits out? I
I
don't know.
well,
That seems like three things that snowball into something that NFL teams don't really want to fool with for the most part.
Well,
Now,
I would agree with you, but I don't think the sitting out thing was anything that he did. I think it's all media people trying to get engagement and conversation going, and that's fine. I mean, I get why people understand that it's like a hot button topic, but and again, Green Thumb, I agree. I think Drake May's better. I think we've said that on this show that I think Drake May's the better player. What I mean is I think
so
you're
there's
right.
someone. You look about internet stupidity just real quick before I forget.
Yeah.
There was someone that called Drake May, and they compared Drake May's season this year to Will Levis's season last year, and basically called them the same.
They might be similar, like in stature, but like that's about it.
Yeah.
What I find interesting, and I'll go back to like Christian McCaffrey, all these players that sit out bowl games or make like again Nick Bosa sat out the entire regular season, his final year at Ohio State. He got injured in like week 2, and he sat out the entire season to rehab an injury. He could have come back for like maybe the last week of the regular season. Where did he get drafted? It did not affect his draft stock because he was good enough. And so I think it's more, to me, the more thoughtful conversation is like, well, what if he does sit out? What does an NFL scout think of him then? What kind of questions are they asking of him then? That's the more interesting stuff. And to your point,
That's why I think the other stuff matters, right?
that's exactly what I'm saying. Like if I'm having all these conversations with a quarterback prospect who could be a top 5 pick, there's a lot of other things that I'm asking, and those are the actual meaningful, more interesting topics and conversations, not whether, Jim Bob 6969 thinks that Caleb Williams is quitting on his team because he didn't play in this bowl game or the month of November or whatever. So I just think there was a lot of internet stupidity this weekend. I will admit that I was part of it on Saturday night, trying to troll my own alumni base. So I'm putting my hand up, being accounted for, but otherwise leave Mike Vrabel alone, leave Caleb Williams alone. And the Titans throwbacks will be pretty cool. So there you go.
There you go.
All right. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group are 2 great sponsors. Make sure you check them out. Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, the sister store, Bluegrass Beverages up in Hendersonville, proud sponsor of Football and Other F Words. You can catch that this week as well. So make sure you check that out. And of course, buildkg.com is where you can go if you want to talk to the Kingston Group, because you just have to have a conversation with them before you do anything big with your house. All right. So if the Titans are not taking phone calls on any young players, they don't want to move any young players, I want to know, like, who are the names that are just so important to you that you're just not even listening? Who would you maybe listen to some phone calls about? But then most importantly, who are the names that are going to be the guys we're talking about going into camp next year throughout the course of the second half that we think have stepped into roles that make them more important pieces, untradeable, right? I've got a couple of names, but I want you to go first. Give me the names of guys that you need to see over the final 10 games that teach you, show you, hey, we are starting pieces, building block foundational pieces moving forward.
John Robinson's entire 2022 draft class. I mean, you need Treylon Burks, you need NPF, you need Chigakonkwo, you need Kyle Phillips, and Roger McCreary is already doing a pretty good job, but you want to see him do it for a full 17 games because he's pretty good last year in the first half of the year. Then he started dwindling down. Those 5 players are the most important players, in my opinion, going forward because they have the most questions around them outside of Roger McCreary. I mean, you need, if NPF steps up and he's awesome, or let's not say awesome. Let's set a low bar of what is acceptable for NPF. If he is average at your left tackle position, that changes the entire dynamic of this offensive line and the entire dynamic of this offense. If he is just average, that changes everything for this team. It does not preclude you from drafting a left tackle next year, but maybe you don't have to draft a left tackle in the first round. Maybe you can get a Keon Coleman, or maybe you can get a, Malik Neighbors or someone else. You may not be Marvin Harrison Jr., but at least you got to play it smart, right?
Yep.
And the same goes for Treylon Burks and Chigakonkwo and Kyle Phillips. They are so important, as well as NPF, to stepping up because they haven't done shit this first half. I don't care if Mike Vrabel shows them every clip that we've talked about him in the locker room. He shows them every tweet. I don't care what happens to get them to get off their ass and live up to their expectations, but they got to do it. Because if they don't do it, if those three guys do not step up, it doesn't matter what the offensive line is. It doesn't matter who your quarterback is. It doesn't matter who the running back is or who's on defense, because that's three important snap count pieces for your team that is not stepping up when they're on the field and eating up considerable snaps, and you have no one to replace them with. And guess what? Your holes are going into 2023 is 2 or 3 wide receivers again. And, oh, man, we're going to have to find another tight end somewhere. I mean, those
corner.
4 guys are the guys that have to step up, in my opinion. And you don't need all 4 of them, but you at least need 50%.
It's funny. I wrote down 4 names, and some of it is tied to my personal expectation of their talent, and some of it is tied to the team's desperate need at that position. So I wrote down Roger McCreary first because I feel like he actually has the most established of the group so far. I wrote down Burks number 2 because I think he has the most upside of all of those names so far. Chig has just been, I think some of it's the product of the situation, with the injuries and the O-line and the quarterback situation, but they need, like, corner is going to be such a monumental focus on this team moving forward. Offensive line, we know with MPF, I agree. So those are the 4 I wrote down. I have Rashad Weaver written down, but it's because I think he's not going to be the guy, right? Like, I think he's not. So I think we're at like a last moment for him. Like, you have the rest of the season to show that you can be like a starting, because again, Danico Autry could be traded in the next 10 days. And if he's traded, you need somebody to step in and fill some of those snaps, whether it's in your hand in the dirt or
Travis Gibson
outside. Travis Gibson. So Rashad Weaver, I think, is in a place where he's like sort of put up or shut up kind of time in his career. And so there's my top tier is with you. I'm with you on this. It is Petit Frere. It is Treylon Burks. It's Roger McCreary. Those 3, because those 3 positions are the most important positions on the team moving forward.
And you can't have another draft class with just
right.
one guy from it.
Right.
Like, I know that GM is gone, but that still hurts the team heading into next year if these players do not start stepping up.
And I am, to Stoney's point, he goes, I think I'm already ready to give up the ghosts on Phillips and Okonkwo. I'm not ready on Chig. I think Chig in the right place, I think, would do very well, and I just think he needs to continue to develop. I don't have any expectations for Kyle Phillips. If he catches 10 passes for this team moving forward, that'll be 10 more than I'm expecting. So it's not that I don't like it's not that I don't like the guy. I don't have any expectation for him. So to me, it is you've got to find out what you've got at corner. You have got to find out if Roger McCreary can play outside. You've got to find out if he can play in this. Like, where is he going to be long-term in your future? I think he's critical. Treylon Burks and MPF are the other 2 big ones. So I'm with you on that. The next tier down is Rashad Weaver. I think Aaron Brewer has proven. I think they've figured out exactly what he is. I think he's the most consistent performer.
I was so surprised when Mike said the same thing, because everybody's been down on Aaron Brewer except for me, I feel like. And I think he's the best. I think he's proven he can do it. I think Brunskill's proven that he could play right guard. I know he had one bad game, but everybody's like, I hear people all the time talk about the 2019 Tennessee Titans. Well, they were getting they got Nate Davis back and Taylor Lewan back, and there's no Nate Davis coming back for this team. They don't need a Nate Davis, right? I mean, they don't need Brunskill. They have Brunskill and Skoronski. Yeah. They don't need a Nate Davis.
No, I think Brewer to go from Ben. I think people vastly undervalue Ben Jones. I think in his value to the team.
There's still a drop off, but he's learning.
But I don't think there's been nearly as big a drop off as people expected. I think the move to center was I think absolutely brilliant, and I think he's he's tougher than a $2 steak. Like, he fits in with everything. They get him out and move him around. The highlights, when you watch all 22 film, he's the guy who's out there doing the most work. So I think Brewers kind of stabilized that spot. And I want to know who are the other Brewers. And I want McCreary, I want Burks, I need Chig, and I need MPF, those 4. But then it's Elijah Molden. What is your role on this team? Like, you have 10 or 12 games here to prove to people that you could be, hey, we're about to trade Kevin Byard. We can do that because we trust Elijah Molden to play his safety role. Like, you got to, some of these guys need to do it, prove it, and stabilize and, solidify a future contract, solidify a roster spot, stay healthy. So I think Weaver's another big one too. It's like, what exactly are you going to be on this team? And I think my guess is that he's proven he's sort of just topped out. But like,
Yeah, I think personally he has a lot to prove, but I don't think he's necessary for the Tennessee Titans in their plans going forward. I don't think he's a necessity. I think edge is a necessity, but he'll never be the edge that this Tennessee Titans team needs. They need they need the guy at edge.
Yes,
Harold
I agree.
Landry's not the guy. Arden Key is better than Harold Landry, but he's not the guy. They need someone as close to Myles Garrett as you can get, and they have no one on that team. And Rashad Weaver will never be anywhere near the Myles Garrett tier.
I am curious what you think of the linebacker position in this conversation, in the context of this conversation.
Running back. It's like running back to me. I mean, I think Azeez had a really great game against the Ravens. But it's like running back, right? I mean, you have to be willing to find better ones. I mean, you could say you could find a linebacker at any point, and Mike Vrabel could do a lot with less talented linebackers. We've seen it in action, but you also are allowed to do better than Jack Gibby and Dylan Cole and those kinds, Luke Gifford and those kinds of guys. You are allowed to do better than that in free agency. Now,
I agree.
You have the money to do that this year. So, but as far as needing to see a guy step it up, I've seen enough from Azeez to know that at least he's a stabilizing force at linebacker. You're not going to see anybody there is no one to step up next to him.
Yeah, that's
you can say, well, Monty Rice would be a name, but we know he's not going to step up. There's no one that can step up in that position unless they signed a free agent that suddenly got cut or something, or maybe someone's included in a Kevin Byard deal that's a linebacker. Like there is nobody on this team that's going to step up and that you should have to see step up. We're going to have to find that guy next year.
Yeah, it's funny. Like the thing that kind of rings in my head all the time is by the end of the year, you just have to fill in some blanks on some of these questions. And that's kind of the impetus behind this conversation, because I think you want to focus on your pieces that you've brought in, whether draft or free agent or young players. Azeez would be considered a young free agent. I don't think I would call Brunskill maybe a young free agent, but he at least is a starting piece. You kind of answered a question. And so that's really what I think this is all about, is try to find, like, let's imagine what a 22 looks like week 1 of next year. How many of those slots are filled? And I think the goal is to try to fill in as many blanks as possible from here on out. And McCreary, MPF,
walk away with more answers than questions. Wins and losses do not matter.
Yes, MPF, Burks, Chig, and McCreary, to me, because of their talent and ability, a little bit of upside, and positions of need, are absolutely the ones that I am focused on from here on out. And then there's another tier down, which I think Brewer's already answered, but it's like Molden, Weaver, Gibbons. Like the feeling you get, not you personally, but fans, when they watch Tajay Spears, because it's easy to evaluate running backs. The feeling you get when you watch Tajay Spears is that you have a starting running back. That's the feeling. I want to know who else is going to have that feeling by the end of the year. That's all. Aaron Brewer, I have that feeling. He's the starting center next year. Feel good about it. What else? What else you got on the team?
Skoronski.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Josh Wiley is someone that you can be allowed to have a little bit of excitement over. It's nothing like, I think that like he's going to be the next Travis Kelce or George Kittle or something, but I think he's shown that he can play a more considerable role. So I think you can get excited about him. I think you get excited by Roger McCreary. Jeffrey Simmons, your level of excitement can stay the same, I guess.
Sure.
Tier Tart, we don't know what he's going to be when you go across it. I like Sean Murphy Bunting. I mean, I would keep him around. I'd keep Azeez Al-Shaair around. Obviously, you're probably tied into a little bit with Amani Hooker, but you're right. There's not a lot of answers to some of these questions, and that's why you need some of these other guys to step up. I mean, I like Brunskill. I think he's perfect. Chris Hubbard's probably not your long-term solution at right tackle. And I don't think Simmons is having a bad year. I think he's having a relatively down year, but he's also eating way too many double teams right now, sometimes triple teams, and he's still got one of the highest pressure rates in the NFL as well. I mean, you gotta look at it in context. We preach about context and nuance all the time on this show. Please quit throwing it out. When there is nobody else but Jeffrey Simmons that an offense has to be scared of, they are going to double and triple team him all the time. and he is eating a lot of that and still being productive in a lot of this more often than not. He may be having a somewhat down year, but he's not having a bad year.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. So Nick Folk also might be established, might have a spot. Again,
I don't like trusting Nick Folk another year
old.
into the future.
He's very old. But again, just
Granddaddy strong legs.
And what we might do is kind of throughout the course of the season, since the whole goal is all these answers and filling in the blanks, we might kind of, as we go through the season, we'll start to put the 22 together and see like, all right, here's what we think we've accomplished, and here are the holes, and we'll kind of work our way through that as well with the big game coming up, of course, this weekend against Atlanta. Arthur Smith coming back to town. Who knows will be the quarterback? I think we'll have a long conversation about the quarterback situation coming up on Thursday, and then again on Monday, I imagine. So make sure you check out that Stack in the Inbox, as well as Football and Other F Words. And so we'll see. There's a lot of young players that have opportunity. They have to look at these next 2 months as opportunity to make yourself a starting NFL football player. And there's plenty of guys that have the talent.
And the Titans have to allow them to do it at this point. You have to allow some of these players to play more. You have to put Kyle Phillips out there more. You have to get him involved. You have to get Josh Wiley, if he clears concussion protocol, and Chig out there more than one of them in Trevon Wesco. You have to get some of these. You have to get Elijah Molden snaps. You have to find ways to get guys involved.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. So there you go. We'll talk a lot more about what we want to see from this team moving forward on Thursday. So make sure you check that out. 440 Sports YouTube page, Twitter account, and Facebook page as well. Also, you can go to any podcast app out there and get the show in podcast form if you don't catch us live. But we love having you guys in there. You guys have grown over the course of the last year and a half doing the show, and love talking with you guys. So even when we disagree, we still love having you guys around. Okay, quickly, Alabama, Tennessee. We can discuss more SEC stuff later as well. Missouri looks like they're legit. They'll play Georgia coming up in 2 weeks. So we can discuss that maybe next week. But Alabama, Tennessee was the big game this weekend. Joe Milton, this is my two major takeaways. My two major takeaways from this game are I think Alabama's likable, which is a really, really hard thing to say and a very strange phenomenon to be experiencing inside my own body.
I want to dive into this guy. I don't understand why they're suddenly likable. So.
And number two, Joe Milton played the best. Remember what we said last week? To win, Tennessee's going to have to be near perfect. They were not. They could not run the ball. They couldn't stop the run. Joe Milton had a near perfect first half. And what I felt watching that game, if I'm a Tennessee fan, is that, man, if we had a legitimate bona fide starting quarterback, we're pretty damn close. We're not as good as Georgia. We're not as good as Alabama yet, consistently year in and year out. But they're doing the right things. Josh Heupel going for it on fourth down. We can debate some of that stuff. There's
I felt like they got outplayed and outcoached in the second half, much like Alabama did last year, and that happens. There are games in college football where sometimes coaches outcoach themselves and players cannot play consistently they can't keep themselves high. You play at a high level coming in. It looked like they kind of wasted all their momentum early. I mean, it's hard to argue with, you score 0 points an entire second half. You can come out, and I know the UT mantra after a loss is it's the ref's fault, but let me tell you something. 0 points an entire second half is not the ref's fault. That comes down to coaching and execution.
Yeah, giving up 27-0 run is not the ref's fault. So I'm not even going to spend any time on that. Look, Alabama's the better team. They were at home. They outplayed you in the second half. They ran the football against the defense that normally doesn't allow it. Tennessee could not run the football. They could not convert on a couple of fourth downs, and they were more penalized. Like, Alabama was more disciplined in that game, and Tennessee had too many. Like, pre-snap is not referee problems. Okay,
it was the entirely different tale of two teams than what it was last year. Because I came on this show last year and I said, listen, people are going to blame the refs, and you may have one or two bad calls, but Alabama got outcoached. They ruined the last few minutes of the chance to win it. I thought they had a poor game plan that last minute leading up to that field goal, and they were undisciplined. And really, that's what UT was, undisciplined, except for their entire game plan and execution stretched an entire half.
Yeah, QC, I love the question. The real question: how was it the Titans' fault that the Vols lost?
Yeah.
Though that's the most important question. So I think if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm honestly walking away going like, look, they played pretty well ish. They made some mistakes. They got out coached. But if they have a star quarterback, they are close to competing at the highest level in the SEC. If the rest of it stays the same, if the rest of the team can kind of continue to grow and stay the same, they're missing on. They don't have like a star wide receiver with Brew McCoy out. Like there's some things that Tennessee just needs to keep building on, but like they seem there. Now, that maybe is spinning into maybe spinning a 2-touchdown, blowing a halftime lead. Maybe I'm spinning that too positively, but I didn't expect him to win the game. So, and credit to you. You said 30-20 basically, and that's almost exactly what it was.
I said is one team's going to score in the 30s, another team's going to score in the 20s, and that team's going to be Alabama is going to be in the 30s.
So, Sinkers
And I
Beverages.
did say more than 10 points, by the way.
You did. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. There we go. Why do I think Alabama is likable? Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, as someone who's covered
I don't
Nick
like
Saban,
them.
as someone who's covered Nick Saban, I can see how like maybe Alabama fans don't like this as much, but that other people objectively, I'm not suggesting that like LSU fans and Tennessee fans like Alabama, but normally Alabama, like Nick Saban, he is on a totally different personality front this year. He has been more jovial. He's been laughing with the media, laughing with fans, answering questions with honesty. Giving like blatant breakdowns of his team on game day, like laughing after the game, laughing at sideline reports, taking the cigar. Like he's just been a different guy, and I find him to be more enjoyable and more entertaining to watch him as an objective observer, not a Tennessee fan or whatever. I get it if you're a Tennessee fan that you hate Nick Saban. I get it. I'm just saying objectively, he has been more entertaining and more likable. I think Jalen Milroe is incredibly likable. I think Jalen Milroe is, from a skill standpoint, from a watching him play the game standpoint, he's not a great player. And I think part of the flaws of this Alabama team is what makes them likable. Like they're not this dominant force that's just going to go out there and beat everybody and crush everybody. They don't have all these superstar dogs that like were 5 stars. They're like all, you know what I mean? Like there's something about the flaws in this team that I find interesting, and that, oh, they're going to get down to Tennessee and then they're going to do something interesting in the second half. Oh, they're going to give up a big, long touchdown drive to Ole Miss, and then we're going to see some old school Alabama. Or like, I don't know. Milroe connects on big plays. I think Jermaine Burton is not particularly likable, but I find everybody else, I find the journey to be more interesting, that Alabama is not this dominant thing that they can lose almost every weekend, and that Jalen Milroe is somehow finding ways to make big plays and win games. And I think he's a really good kid. I think he's a fun kid to watch. That's all.
I think that is the way to put it, is that maybe this team is much more interesting than any other team we've seen the last few years, because we are getting more close games. I mean, there were times where Alabama was beating people so bad, Lauren would ask, you can watch the Alabama game? Nah, they're probably going to win. Like, now I want to tune in, right? Like, and now I have to tune in. It's like appointment viewing, because it's like interesting. It feels like real football, yet I always kind of feel like Alabama's going to win. But at least I think it's going to be interesting. There's something to that to me, it's just like, I'm much more interested in a team that may not win the game than the team that's going to blow out the game. Like, I don't what the Ravens particularly did to the Detroit Lions, an enjoyable game. Now, we'll say this. There was a lot of good highlights and a lot of good from Lamar from that game. But I think watching it via Red Zone was the exact way to watch that kind of game. If there was a college football Red Zone, that's how I would have felt like it for Alabama. Like, that's the most enjoyable way to watch Alabama, is like the Red Zone. This year, they're putting together, like you said, come from behind performances. They're winning in different ways, and that makes it interesting week to week. And I'm a guy that has always kind of said that I think that Georgia isn't as good as what they are. I could see Alabama beating Georgia, but losing LSU. Like, I could see it vice versa, and I could see them losing to both, and I could see them winning both. Like, it feels like an endless set of possibilities for this Alabama team.
Like, and having an elite defense in a year where defense might be making a comeback. Saban's a different personality type. And again, I think objectively, put your fandom aside, watching Jalen Milroe's skill set is interesting. He's not an NFL player, but like he is an interesting player. The burst out of the pocket. I think Tommy Rees has got to design more quarterback runs for the love of Christ, because you have such a fun player with such a unique skill set.
Or someone has to.
No shit. And I
don't care if it's Tommy Rees or not. Just someone
anybody.
give me some more design runs.
But he's like, if you listen to his interviews, he's an interesting guy. Like he's a likable character. Like he's having fun. Like imagine that. Just have fun playing a game. Like it's just. And I realize that not every Tennessee fan or LSU fan or Ole Miss fan is going to feel any of this stuff, and I understand that. But I just, as someone who has dealt with this Saban monster and this Alabama monster for my entire career, this is a far more interesting and likable version of that team. And it doesn't matter what they accomplish. I just think they are a more interesting and likable version of Alabama. And is that because Georgia's the big dog now? Is that because Tennessee's more relevant and closer? Is that because LSU's scoring 1,000 points? Sure. That's all tied. Is that because Kiffin is 6-1 at Ole Miss? Like, yeah, it's all tied together to be more interesting to me. And I don't know. I think
Texas fans are very interested in everything Alabama does from here on out.
Let me ask you this: to your point about playing Georgia, if the unbiased observer, objective observer, is watching Georgia Alabama in the SEC championship game. Alabama has one loss. Georgia's undefeated. The loser's not going to make the playoff, and the winner does make the playoff. I'm curious who people are rooting for.
I would think they're rooting for Alabama, don't you think?
I think it's possible for the first time ever that people might be rooting for Alabama.
I'm so ready to watch Missouri versus Georgia. We'll talk about that later.
I don't want to disappoint you.
I'm very excited.
But like 5 years ago, if I would have told you that the country would be rooting for Alabama in an SEC championship game, you'd have told me I was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And now, if they play Georgia, there is a good chance with all the stuff that Georgia's been going through off the field and back-to-back champs, and now you got this softer Nick Saban with Jalen Milroe. I think there is a chance that people will be like, "Oh yeah, Bama," and I've never thought that in 15 years. So just want to throw it out there.
I like it.
That's why you come here.
I like it. I was not expecting that to be a topic. By the way, because I was very confused when you had said that.
I was
also, just real quick, Mississippi State versus Arkansas. I saw that score when I was drunk later on, and I was like, that can't be right. My ESPN app has to be frozen, right? Like, there's something wrong with my ESPN.
Well, Arkansas they've lost 6 straight, and they fired their offensive coordinator Dan Enos, who was the new coordinator this year, who was also a former coordinator.
That will solve it.
So now he's a 2-time former Arkansas offensive coordinator, which is hilarious. Stoney says, "What about Missouri getting revenge against LSU in the SEC championship game?" We'll get to Missouri next week when they play Georgia. Georgia has Florida this weekend. I would like to believe that Missouri, a team with very few weaknesses, by the way. What I find interesting about Missouri is that they have no real weaknesses. I don't think they are. Well, I'll just save it for next week.
We'll see. I'm ready.
Missouri LSU, one of the most entertaining games of the season. That is for sure. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out, stacking the inbox, F Word, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. You guys know the drill. Get to us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We do appreciate your support. All you guys out there, share the show. Tell somebody about it. Like, hey, you don't want to listen to flaming, stupid hot take radio and ridiculous Twitter garbage. Please come hang out with us. Tell somebody about it. Be an ambassador for the show. We'd really appreciate it, guys. And that's about it. Otherwise, for Zach, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday. Thanks.